The dream of traveling faster than light had lived in the hearts of humans for as long as they could look at the stars. People had crossed oceans, climbed mountains, and reached the moon, but the stars had always been beyond reach. Every scientist who tried to go beyond the speed of light was told the same thing. It was impossible. The laws of physics wouldn't allow it. But deep in a quiet research station on the outskirts of Geneva, a small group of scientists refused to give up. They believed there was a way, not by breaking the laws of physics, but by bending them just enough to move between 2 points without crossing the space in between. They called it the Casimir Cascade, a theory that could make faster-than-light travel possible by folding space itself. The person leading the project was a woman with calm eyes and steady hands. She had spent most of her life studying how the universe worked and how humans could move through it without being bound by its limits. She didn't care about fame or politics. She cared about progress, about proving that humanity was meant for more than just one small world. The world's leaders, however, weren't convinced. The Unified Council, which represented both Earth and several alien civilizations that humanity had made contact with over the past century, had strong opinions about this kind of research. They warned that faster-than-light travel wasn't just dangerous, Jan, it was forbidden. Their warning wasn't based on superstition or fear of competition. It came from experience. Other civilizations had tried to do what humans were attempting now. None of them had succeeded, and none of them had survived long enough to explain what went wrong. The records were vague. Lost ships, disappearing planets, strange bursts of radiation that erased entire systems. The Council called these events cosmic ruptures, and the message was simple: never try again. But humanity had always been different. Curiosity was part of who they were. Every great step forward had come with risk, and every warning had been ignored by someone brave, or foolish, enough to try. The research team worked in secret for years. Governments denied involvement, though everyone knew they were watching. The station's security was tight, guarded by silence and the promise of discovery. Every night, the small group of engineers and scientists would gather around holographic displays, running simulations, arguing over equations, and staring at impossible results. Each time they came close, something went wrong: a magnetic surge, a collapse in the energy field, a total system freeze. The project was expensive and dangerous, and it had already pushed the limits of what human technology could handle. But the lead scientist wouldn't stop. She kept saying the same thing: if the laws of physics tell us no, then we'll write a new law. After years of setbacks, they finally built the first working prototype, a small, unmanned craft powered by what they called the Cascade Drive. It didn't use normal fuel. Instead, it pulled energy from the vacuum itself, creating a ripple in the quantum fabric of space. The test was simple. Activate the drive for a few seconds and see if the craft could disappear from one point and reappear a short distance away. When they ran the first test, the entire facility held its breath. The craft shimmered, the sensors went wild, and then it vanished. For 10 long seconds, there was nothing. Then, just as suddenly, the craft reappeared 5 kilometers from its original position. It wasn't much, but it was proof. They had folded space. That night, the team couldn't sleep. They had achieved something that had only existed in science fiction. Humanity had taken its first small step toward the stars. They celebrated quietly, knowing that this moment would one day be written in history books. But behind the excitement, there was also fear. The readings from the test were strange. The background energy around the craft had shifted in a way no one could explain. It was like the universe had noticed. When the Council found out about the experiment, they demanded an immediate stop to the research. They claimed humanity was opening doors that were never meant to be opened. Some Council members even refused to speak to human representatives, saying that Earth was playing with forces older than life itself. But instead of fear, the warning only brought determination. Earth's leaders saw this as proof that they were on the right path. If other civilizations were afraid of what humans could discover, then maybe humanity had just stepped into a future even the oldest species couldn't imagine. The team received full backing to continue. Resources poured in. The small prototype was replaced with something larger, a human-crewed vessel designed to travel beyond the solar system. It was called Dauntless, a name chosen to symbolize courage in the face of the unknown. The world waited with nervous excitement. Every screen, every broadcast, every headline spoke of the same thing: the first human attempt to travel faster than light. On the day of the test, the launch site was filled with people, scientists, politicians, journalists, and even representatives from other planets. The ship gleamed under the artificial lights, standing like a promise to everything humanity had ever dreamed of. The crew boarded quietly, their faces calm but pale. They knew the risks. They also knew that history didn't remember those who stayed behind. As the countdown began, the atmosphere shifted. The air seemed to hum with energy. Cameras zoomed in on the ship's surface, capturing the soft glow of the Cascade drive as it came online. The lights flickered, then steadied. 5 seconds, a voice announced. The team in the control room exchanged nervous glances. The lead scientist stood at the main console, her hand hovering over the final command. This was the moment she had waited her entire life for. The moment humanity would break free of its limits. 3, 2, 1. The Dauntless activated the drive. The light didn't explode or flash. It folded. Space itself seemed to ripple, bending around the ship like liquid glass. The air went silent. The readings on every monitor flatlined, and for a few terrifying moments it was as if reality had stopped breathing. Then, nothing. The ship was gone. The crowd erupted in noise. Some gasped, some shouted, others simply stared. The control room filled with confusion. No signal, no readings, no response. It was as if Dauntless had never existed. 3 minutes passed. Then a voice came through the static. "Control, this is Dauntless. We have visual contact with Proxima Centauri." The room froze. That was impossible. Proxima Centauri was more than 4 light-years away. It should have taken thousands of years to get there. But the ship's telemetry confirmed it. Dauntless had traveled across interstellar space in less than 3 minutes. Cheers broke out. Scientists hugged each other. People cried. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had crossed the stars in the blink of an eye. The news spread across the world within minutes. People filled the streets, waving flags, lighting fires, crying tears of joy. Humanity had proven that it was not just a small species on a small planet. It had become something more, a civilization capable of reaching the heavens. But amid the celebration, the council sat in silence. Their faces were pale, their voices low. They replayed the test data, watched the drive activation, studied the patterns that appeared just before the ship vanished. Something in that data terrified them, because what they saw wasn't just a ship moving faster than light. They saw something else. A disturbance, a shadow in the space where the Dauntless had gone. Something vast, watching. And though humanity didn't know it yet, the moment Dauntless jumped, the universe had changed forever. The day after the Dauntless made its jump, the entire world felt different. Cities that had once been full of routine were now full of wonder. People looked at the night sky with new eyes, knowing that humans were no longer trapped under it. Children pointed at stars, asking their parents which one the Dauntless had reached. Every news channel spoke the same words: humanity has gone faster than light. It didn't feel real. It sounded like a line from a science fiction movie. But this time it was true. Inside the Lunar Command Center, where the mission had been monitored, the atmosphere was electric. Scientists barely slept. They replayed the footage again and again, studying every bit of data they could get. Yaowia's jump had lasted only minutes, but it had rewritten everything they knew about space, time, and motion. Then came the signal. The crew of the Dauntless had re-established full contact. They were alive, healthy, and orbiting Proxima Centauri, the nearest star beyond the sun. It was the greatest human achievement in history. The Unified Council, a group made up of older advanced civilizations and human representatives, immediately called an emergency session. Not because they wanted to celebrate, but because of what the data showed. While Earth cheered, the Council stared at the readings with growing unease. The energy pattern of the FTL drive didn't match anything they had seen before. It wasn't just a simple fold in space. It looked like the ship had disappeared from the universe and returned through a place no one could describe. But for the humans on the Dauntless, it felt like victory. When the transmission from the ship came through, people across the world stopped what they were doing to listen. The captain's voice was steady but quiet, almost in disbelief. "Mission Control," he said. "You won't believe what we've seen." He described a smooth jump, a flash, a strange silence, and then Proxima Centauri filling their window. But when asked what had happened during those few moments, the crew hesitated. "It's hard to explain," one of them said. "It was like we weren't anywhere. The stars were gone. There was no light, no time, just—" The voice trailed off. "It felt like something was watching us." The scientists on Earth exchanged uneasy looks. They thought it might be stress, or maybe the result of sensory confusion during the jump. But when the recordings from the Dauntless came in, things grew stranger. The ship's onboard sensors had captured something, a pattern of energy that appeared right before they re-emerged. It wasn't random. It almost looked like a signal, repeating in precise intervals. Some thought it was just noise caused by the drive's instability. Others weren't so sure. The Council's analysts studied the data for hours. Their conclusions were quiet but alarming. The drive had pierced a part of space that shouldn't exist, a space where normal physics broke down. One alien scientist described it as touching the skin between realities. Still, humanity celebrated. Cities held parades. People danced in the streets, waving flags and shouting into the night sky. For the first time, they didn't feel small. They felt infinite. Back in the lunar facility, the team that built the drive was exhausted, but proud. They had faced doubt, fear, and pressure from every direction, but now their creation was proof that nothing was impossible. The lead scientist walked through the observation hall, past tired engineers and blinking monitors, feeling both joy and unease. Something about the silence between signals, that gap when the Dauntless had vanished, didn't feel right. Every time she looked at the data, she noticed patterns that didn't belong, shapes that weren't noise. She tried to convince herself it was just interference. But deep down she knew that space doesn't make shapes by accident. A week later, the Dauntless began its return trip. The world held its breath again. The same hum filled the control room as the drive powered up. And just like before, the ship vanished, gone from every sensor, every radar, every eye. 3 minutes later, it reappeared near the moon, perfectly intact. This time, the crowd didn't cheer immediately. They waited for the crew's report. When the airlock opened, the astronauts stepped out slowly. Their faces were pale, their eyes distant, as if they had seen something that couldn't be described. Reporters shouted questions, flashes went off, but none of them spoke for a long time. Finally, one of them said softly, "It wasn't the same coming back." The scientists gathered for debriefing, expecting tales of technical glitches or system errors. Instead, they heard something different. The crew described the same silent void, but this time it was filled with movement. Not light, not sound, just the sense that something was there, shifting in the darkness, close enough to touch. One of them said, "We saw ourselves," or versions of ourselves, like shadows looking back. The room went cold. No one wanted to believe it. They told themselves it was fatigue, an illusion caused by stress. But the recordings from the ship's cameras showed brief flashes, faint mirrored images of the crew that appeared for less than a second, moving when they didn't. The council called another emergency session. Representatives from several alien worlds appeared through holographic projection, their expressions grim. One of them, an elder species that had traveled the stars long before humanity learned to fly, spoke first. "You have crossed a boundary that was never meant to be crossed," he said. "You didn't travel through space. You traveled through what lies beneath it." The human delegates demanded answers. Why had no one warned them? Why had the council kept this secret? The alien representative paused before answering. "Because those who tried before you never came back the same. The void remembers those who touch it." It sounded like a myth, something out of legend. But as more data came in, it became clear that something was happening. Instruments across the solar system started detecting faint distortions in background radiation. They were harmless at first, but growing stronger every day. The readings matched the exact frequency of the Dauntless drive. The Council urged Earth to shut down the program. But humanity was not ready to stop. The discovery was too important, too revolutionary. Governments saw it as a symbol of human strength, proof that Earth could stand equal to any other civilization in the galaxy. The lead scientist, though, couldn't shake her worry. Every night she stayed late in the control room, staring at the faint patterns appearing in the cosmic background. They looked almost like messages, repeating endlessly in the same rhythm the Dauntless had pulsed when it jumped. One night, while reviewing a new set of data, she noticed something chilling. A faint signal, not random static, but a clear sequence of pulses, forming a phrase in binary code. She translated it slowly, expecting nonsense. But the message was simple. "We see you." She sat in silence, staring at the words. It didn't make sense. There was no source. The signal came from nowhere and everywhere at once. She didn't report it right away. Maybe she was afraid no one would believe her, or maybe, deep down, she didn't want to accept what it meant. Outside, the world kept celebrating. The story of Dauntless was already being turned into movies, songs, and books. Humanity had finally proven that the stars were within reach, but up in the council chambers the mood was darker. The oldest civilizations were whispering warnings to one another. They had seen this before, in old records, from species that vanished long ago. The same energy readings, the same excitement, the same silence afterward. As the meeting ended, one of the council members said quietly, "They have woken it again." The humans in the room didn't understand. They asked what it was, but no one answered. The alien delegates only turned away, their expressions filled with something between fear and pity. On Earth, the lead scientist finally decided to speak. She sent a confidential message to the council, attaching the strange signal she had found. Her note was short. "If this is real, we need to know what's watching." No one replied that night. As she looked out at the stars from her window, she couldn't help but wonder if something out there was looking back. And somewhere, far beyond the light, in the quiet folds of space where the Dauntless had traveled, something stirred, slow, patient, and aware. But on Earth, no one noticed. Humanity was too busy celebrating its victory, unaware that its greatest success might have opened a door that could never be closed again. The Dauntless returned home to a world that no longer felt the same. Humanity had crossed a border that had always seemed unreachable. They had gone faster than light. They had touched another star and come back. Every nation, every city, every person with a screen had seen the news. For the first time in history, the entire world had shared a single moment of pride. The crew of the Dauntless became heroes overnight. Their faces were everywhere. Interviews, documentaries, holograms floating over city squares. People cheered their names, waved flags, and held signs that said, "We did it." But the crew didn't look like people who had just made history. They smiled for the cameras, but their eyes told a different story. There was something in their expressions, something distant, as if part of them had never truly come back. During the first round of debriefings, mission officials tried to keep things light. They asked about the jump, about what the crew saw when they reached Proxima Centauri, about how it felt to travel faster than light. At first, the answers were simple. It was silent, disorienting, breathtaking. But when the conversation shifted to what happened during the jump, the tone in the room changed. One of the crew members hesitated before speaking. He said that for a moment it felt like time had stopped. There was no sound, no gravity, no sense of direction, only a strange stillness. Another crew member added that they saw flashes of light that weren't part of the ship, shapes, reflection, like ripples moving through the darkness. At first, the scientists thought it was just an effect of the jump, light distortions, maybe after images caused by their brains struggling to process the sudden change. But then, the ship's recorded data confirmed something impossible. The onboard sensors had detected energy readings during the jump that didn't match any known natural source. It was as if the ship had passed through a region of space that wasn't entirely empty. The energy pattern wasn't random either. It had rhythm, almost like a pulse. When the scientists showed the data to the crew, one of them whispered, "That's what we felt. The lead researcher stared at the display for a long time, silent. It was clear something unusual had happened, something beyond human understanding. Still, the world outside didn't care about small details. The focus was on the achievement, not the mystery. The news called it a miracle of human progress. Documentaries called it the dawn of the second space age. But in private, the scientists were starting to worry. Over the next few weeks, small anomalies began to appear across the solar system. Telescopes picked up faint flickers of light near distant planets, tiny temporary distortions in space. At first, they were dismissed as equipment errors, but soon the readings became too frequent to ignore. They all shared one strange trait. They matched the energy signature of the Dauntless drive. The Council demanded a full investigation. Humanity was now under intense observation. Many alien civilizations, far older and wiser, sent messages warning Earth not to continue testing the drive. But those warnings were met with suspicion. Some humans believed the aliens were simply jealous or afraid of Earth's progress. Governments funded new FTL prototypes, convinced they could perfect the technology and prove their independence. The research expanded. More teams joined. More drives were built. Yet behind the scenes, the scientists who worked closest to the original data couldn't ignore the signs. The background radiation around Earth had changed. Subtle fluctuations appeared in the quantum field, something unseen before the first FTL jump. It was as if the universe itself was reacting. The lead scientists began to spend most nights alone in the control center, studying the strange pulses picked up by deep space sensors. The patterns had become clearer now. They repeated, always at the same intervals, always in the same frequency range as the Dauntless's jump. And then, one night, a pattern changed. It wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It was a signal. The message came as a sequence of simple binary tones, short and long pulses. It looked deliberate, almost intelligent. She ran it through multiple translators and decryption tools, expecting gibberish. But the output was chillingly simple. We remember. She sat frozen, staring at the screen. There was no source. The signal didn't come from any direction in space. It came from everywhere, as though it was being whispered through the fabric of reality itself. She sent the data to the Council, attaching a short note. Something is responding to us. The Council didn't reply for days. When they finally did, the response was short and diplomatic. Please cease all FTL activity immediately. Earth didn't listen. The drive had already become a symbol of human pride. The world had tasted greatness and it refused to give it up. More test ships were launched, each one equipped with updated versions of the drive. Every test was a success, but each came with new anomalies. Some ships returned with slightly altered readings of time, as if they had experienced the journey differently. One ship's onboard clock was 2 minutes ahead of Earth's atomic time, even though the mission lasted only 3 minutes. Another ship's crew reported feeling like the trip had taken hours, not seconds. People began to whisper about it online. Conspiracy channels called it the timeline ripple. Theories flooded the networks: time distortion, alternate realities, even the idea that humanity had broken into another layer of existence. But within the research community, there was no excitement, only fear. The data from all the FTL tests showed one growing pattern. The universe's energy balance was shifting. It was like the space-time fabric had been stretched too thin, and something was pushing back. The Council's warnings became stronger. They sent envoys to Earth, pleading with the governments to stop. "You are not the first," one of them said during a private meeting. "Others have done what you are doing now." We tried to warn them too. None of them are here anymore. The human officials were silent. They wanted proof, not stories. The alien envoy sighed, lowering his voice. "You have touched the deep layer, the space beneath space. It is not empty. It listens." Back on the moon, the lead scientist tried to find answers on her own. She replayed the Dauntless jump data 1,000 times, searching for what everyone had missed. And then she noticed something no one had reported before. In the split second before the ship reappeared near Proxima Centauri, there was an image burned into one of the ship's external sensors, faint but visible. A shape, not a planet, not a star, not even a shadow. It looked almost like a reflection of the Dauntless itself, but stretched and twisted, as if space had shown a distorted echo of the ship. She leaned closer. heart pounding. For a moment it looked like that echo wasn't just a reflection. It was reaching toward the ship. She shut the monitor off immediately. Her hands trembled. The next morning she presented her findings to the council scientists. They didn't speak. One of them simply turned off the screen and said quietly, "Erase it." The official explanation was simple: a visual error caused by quantum lensing. But deep down, everyone in the room knew it wasn't that. Meanwhile, the strange background signal, the one that said, "We remember," began repeating again. But this time it added something new. The pulses shifted, rearranged, and formed a new pattern that translated to, "You opened the way." The lead scientist couldn't sleep after that. Every sound at night reminded her of that steady pulse, that quiet rhythm from space. She started keeping her screens on even when she wasn't working, afraid of missing something. The world outside was still celebrating. Humans were planning their first FTL colony mission, building a larger version of the Dauntless that could carry hundreds of people. To the public, it was the next great step. To her, it felt like a countdown. The council issued one last formal warning. It was longer this time, almost emotional. You have achieved what should not be achieved. The universe is older than you can imagine, and some places were never meant to be seen. What lies beyond the light does not sleep. The message was dismissed as superstition by human leaders. The drive program continued, but in quiet moments, even the most confident officials found themselves staring at the night sky, wondering if something out there had started staring back. And somewhere in the deep silence of space, a faint echo responded, repeating the same message again and again in the same calm rhythm. "We remember. You opened the way." The message from the council arrived in the early hours of the morning. It was marked as urgent, level red. Only a few people were allowed to see it, and the translation took several hours. When it was finally read aloud, the words sent a quiet chill through the room. The council's message was short. "Cease all faster-than-light activity. You have disturbed the boundary. We will meet in person." For the first time in history, every member of the Unified Council agreed to gather physically instead of using holographic communication. It was a rare event, something that happened only in moments of deep crisis. The meeting was to take place in the central chamber, located on a vast station orbiting a neutral planet near the center of the Council territories. The human representatives were nervous, but confident. They believed the Council was overreacting. To them, the faster-than-light drive wasn't a danger. It was proof that humanity had finally joined the stars as equals. But when they arrived at the Council hall, that confidence began to fade. The hall was enormous, a circular chamber filled with hundreds of seats, each representing a different world, some of them thousands of years older than Earth. The air was thick with tension. Conversations were quiet, faces unreadable. When the human delegation entered, the room fell silent. At the center stood a large, hollow display showing the data from the Dauntless's first and second jumps. Streams of symbols and energy patterns filled the screen, forming shapes that looked strange and almost alive. The lead scientist recognized them instantly. They were the same readings she had seen during her long nights in the control room. A council elder, tall and pale, stepped forward. His voice was calm but heavy. "We have seen this pattern before," he said. "Many thousands of years ago." The humans exchanged puzzled looks. The elder continued, "You call it faster-than-light travel, but this is not travel. It is intrusion." The words echoed in the chamber. He went on to explain that long before humanity's rise, other civilizations had discovered similar technology. They too had folded space, thinking they had mastered the laws of the universe. For a short time, they thrived. Then, without warning, they vanished. Entire systems gone, stars dimmed, signals cut off forever. The records were incomplete. No one knew exactly what happened, only that the same strange energy pattern appeared every time before a disappearance. The pattern was identical to the one produced by the human FTL drive. One human representative leaned forward. "Are you saying we've opened something?" The elder nodded slowly. "A doorway, and something is looking through it." The room stayed silent. The humans didn't know what to say. It sounded like a myth, a story meant to scare them into stopping. But the elder wasn't smiling. None of the council members were. They began showing archived data, old holographic recordings of other civilizations' final transmissions. Each one had the same strange distortion before the signal cut off. The same pulse, the same hum that had surrounded the Dauntless when it jumped. The lead scientist felt a chill crawl down her spine. She knew that hum. She had listened to it for hours during their experiments. Another council member spoke, his voice softer this time. "We do not understand what lies beyond the boundary. We only know that it reacts when touched. It notices." The humans listened, unsure whether to believe it or not. To them, science was about evidence. But what they were hearing sounded like superstition. Still, the fear in the council's voices was real. These were civilizations that had lived through more than any human could imagine, and none of them were laughing. After several hours of tense discussion, the meeting ended without agreement. The council demanded that Earth destroy all existing FTL drives. The human delegation refused. They promised to be careful, to study the drive more safely, but they would not stop progress. When the humans left, the council chamber stayed quiet for a long time. Some members whispered among themselves, wondering if humanity truly understood what it had done. Others said it was already too late, that the signal had gone out into the dark and something had heard it. Back on Earth, the news of the meeting spread quickly. Most people didn't know the details, only that the council had tried to stop humanity from continuing its FTL research. The reaction was strong. People filled the streets, waving banners that said things like, "No one can stop us now and the future belongs to Earth." Governments used the moment to strengthen their unity. The FTL program became a global project, shared by all nations. It was more than science now. It was pride. Humanity would not bow to fear. But behind the celebrations, strange things were beginning to happen. Observatories on the outer planets reported faint distortions in space, thin waves of invisible energy moving through the void. They were harmless at first, but growing stronger. Spacecraft sensors started picking up tiny flickers of interference like echoes coming from nowhere. At first, scientists thought it was a glitch caused by solar radiation, but soon the distortions began to align into patterns, almost like ripples moving outward from Earth's own position. It was as if something was answering back. The lead scientist became restless. She couldn't stop thinking about what the council elder had said, that something was looking through the doorway. Every time she replayed the drive data, she saw the same pulse, the same pattern, repeating endlessly. Then came the new transmission. It arrived late one night, a faint signal captured by one of the deep space listening stations. It wasn't random noise. It carried structure, rhythm. It was faint, almost like a heartbeat. When the data was decoded, it matched the Dauntless's engine frequency perfectly, but there was no ship out there. The drive wasn't active. The scientist stared at the readings for a long time. Whatever it wasn't coming from within the solar system. It was coming from far beyond. The next morning, she brought the data to the council liaison on Earth. He looked pale when he saw it. "That's the same pattern that destroyed the Arcani's colonies," he whispered, referring to a civilization long lost in the council's records. The scientist tried to stay calm. "Maybe it's just an echo. Maybe it's not what you think." The liaison looked at her sadly. "No, it's not an echo. It's an answer." The council held one final closed meeting that lasted for hours. When it ended, the human delegates emerged with unreadable faces. The council had given up trying to stop them. They couldn't force humanity to destroy its technology, not without risking war. But the council members' silence spoke volumes. They didn't argue anymore. They simply watched humanity with quiet dread, as though waiting for something they already knew was coming. In the weeks that followed, the faint pulse from space grew stronger. It was no longer just detectable by specialized instruments. Even standard communication satellites began to pick it up. The rhythm was steady, slow, and unmistakably deliberate. Every time it repeated, the scientist's chest tightened. She began to have dreams. Strange, vivid dreams of endless darkness, of faint lights flickering like distant stars, and a feeling of something vast and quiet surrounding her. She told no one. Earth continued to move forward. Plans for a full-scale FTL fleet were underway. People talked about colonizing nearby systems within the decade. Humanity was unstoppable, but far away in the Council's archive worlds, old scientists reopened sealed files. They compared the new human data to the patterns from civilizations long gone. The match was exact. For them, it wasn't discovery. It was repetition. One ancient alien voice broke the silence in a private meeting, saying softly, "They have done it again." The doorway is open. Back on Earth, the scientist stood in the control room, staring at the faint pulse on her screen. It was still there, still repeating as if calling out softly across the dark. She whispered under her breath, almost afraid to hear herself say it. What if it's not just watching? What if it's coming closer? No one answered. The monitors hummed quietly, and beyond the glass the stars shone, calm, distant, and endless. But deep in the blackness between them, something had started to move. The strange pulse from deep space didn't stop. It came every night now, soft and steady, like a heartbeat echoing across the stars. At first, only large observatories could detect it, but soon, even amateur astronomers with backyard telescopes began picking it up. The pattern was always the same, a repeating sequence of signals that matched the energy, frequency of humanity's first faster-than-light jump. People started calling it the Whisper. News networks ran endless stories about it. Some claimed it was a cosmic echo from the Dauntless's historic flight. Others believed it was a message, a sign that humanity was not alone. A few scientists warned that it wasn't a greeting, but a reply. Despite the tension, most people were excited. The idea that something, or someone, was answering humanity's call filled the world with a strange kind of hope. For the first time in history, the entire planet was united in curiosity. Everyone wanted to know who was sending the signal, and what it meant. In the Lunar Command Center, however, the mood was very different. The scientists who had worked on the FTL drive were no longer celebrating. They stayed quiet, focused, and cautious. Every new reading from the Whisper showed the same pattern, but each time it grew slightly stronger, slightly closer. The lead scientist spent long nights in her lab, reviewing the data again and again. The signal wasn't coming from any known star system. It wasn't traveling in a straight line. It was spreading, appearing in multiple places at once like ripples in a pond. It didn't behave like light or sound or radio. It behaved like something that wasn't supposed to exist. The Council's representatives returned to Earth with grim expressions. They brought records, ancient records from civilizations that had once sent similar signals into the cosmos. Those civilizations had also heard the Whisper before they vanished. The lead scientist listened quietly as they showed her the data. The patterns matched perfectly. She felt her stomach twist. The Council's envoy said softly, "We don't think this is a voice. We think it's an awareness. Something vast. Something old." The scientist didn't reply. She looked down at the floor, thinking of the Dauntless, of the moment it had first folded space. Maybe the drive hadn't just moved the ship across the stars. Maybe it had broken something that was never meant to be touched. A week later, strange changes began to appear in the night sky. Astronomers noticed that distant stars at the edge of the galaxy were dimming, not suddenly but slowly, as though something was passing in front of them. It was faint at first, but the pattern was spreading. One by one, the stars blinked out, replaced by darkness that sensors couldn't measure. It wasn't dust or gas or shadow. It was nothing. The Council called another emergency meeting. For the first time, they didn't argue. They were afraid. When the humans joined the conference, they found the chamber quieter than ever before. The elder who had warned them months earlier looked tired, his voice heavy with resignation. "You have awakened it," he said. "Now it knows where you are." The human representative sat in silence. The words felt unreal, like a line from a nightmare that refused to end. But outside the council chamber, the world was still celebrating. Most people didn't even know about the dimming stars. Governments kept the information quiet, afraid to cause panic. Instead, they focused on the future. Construction of the next FTL ship, Dauntless II, was already underway. It was larger, stronger, and designed for longer missions. Humanity was moving forward no matter what the council said. The lead scientist, though, couldn't shake the growing fear in her chest. Every new report from the outer colonies showed signs of interference. Brief communication drops, unexplained power losses, small but repeating signals that matched the Whisper's frequency. She tried to convince the project heads to pause the new drive tests. "Something is wrong," she said. "The signal isn't just random. It's learning from us. But her warnings were ignored. The world had waited too long for this technology. Billions of people had their hopes tied to it. The future couldn't stop for fear. Then one night everything changed. The whisper suddenly grew louder, so loud that every receiver across the planet picked it up. It wasn't faint anymore. It was clear. The signal repeated in waves, filling the communication bands, echoing through satellites and space stations. This time the pattern wasn't just numbers. It was language. Not any language known to humans, but a rhythm, a tone that seemed to carry emotion. When translated through frequency mapping, it formed a simple phrase. Only 2 words appeared on the screen. We see. The lunar control room went silent. No one spoke for several minutes. They sent the data to the council. The reply came hours later. You must shut down all FTL systems now, the message read. It's not a signal anymore. It's a presence. But before any action could be taken, something else happened. Across the solar system, small fluctuations appeared in the fabric of space. They were faint distortions, harmless at first, but they began to move. Every time an FTL engine powered up, even for testing, the distortions shifted closer. It was as if the universe was responding to every pulse of human technology. The scientist and her team watched the readings for hours, helpless. The data told them something undeniable. The source of the whisper was aligning directly with Earth. The Council sent final warnings, but humanity had gone too far to turn back. The dream of interstellar travel had become too big to abandon. In an emergency broadcast, the Council's oldest member addressed humanity directly for the first time in centuries. His voice was calm but filled with sorrow. "We are not your enemies," he said. "We have seen this before. The more you call to it, the more it will listen. And when it listens, it comes closer." The message was broadcast across every network. Some people took it seriously, others laughed. Talk shows and online debates filled the airwaves. Half the world thought it was a myth. The other half began to feel a deep unease every time they looked at the stars. The lead scientist didn't speak to the media. She barely slept. The pulse, the whisper, now filled her lab at all hours. It was no longer just data. It had a tone, a faint sound almost like breathing through static. Then one evening she received an encrypted message from a deep space observatory near the edge of the system. The message contained only a few lines. We pointed our telescopes toward the dimming stars. There is movement. It's not light. It's not matter. It's coming this way. Her hand shook as she read it. The next morning she met with the council liaison again. His face was pale. He told her something she already feared deep down. "We can't stop it," he said quietly. "It's not a signal anymore. It's a path. You opened the way and it's using it." She asked him what it was. He didn't answer. He only looked up at the holographic map of the stars, where the spreading darkness was now approaching the edges of known space. The world still didn't know. People went about their days as usual. Children played in parks. Families planned trips to the new colonies. Humanity carried on with the same courage and or blindness in that had always defined it. But in secret, the council began preparing evacuation protocols. They didn't tell Earth why. They only said it was precautionary. The lead scientist stayed awake for 2 days straight, staring at the data. She wanted to believe there was still a way to reverse it, to close whatever doorway the FTL drive had opened. But every test, every model, every equation told the same story. The connection couldn't be undone. The more they tried to control it, the more it grew. Late one night, as she sat alone in the darkened control room, the whisper changed again. For the first time, it didn't sound like a signal. It sounded like a voice, soft, low, and calm. No words this time. Just the feeling of something vast, patient, and aware. The scientist leaned closer to the console, her heart pounding. She didn't speak. She just listened. The rhythm slowed. Then one final sequence of tones appeared on the screen. She translated it automatically, almost without thinking. It said, "You called. We are coming." The message ended. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the machines. Far away, beyond the edge of sight, the last of the dimming stars flickered and went dark. But humanity didn't notice. Not yet. The people still believed they were reaching for the stars. They didn't realize that this time the stars were reaching back. The message, "You called. We are coming." spread quietly through the scientific networks before anyone could stop it. The data was real, the frequency genuine, and the translation confirmed by multiple labs. But officially it didn't exist. Government suppressed the signal, claiming it was a natural anomaly, nothing to worry about. Still, rumors grew. Scientists whispered to each other in hushed tones. Observatories reported the same strange thing, stars disappearing, not exploding or fading, but simply being gone. The darkness spreading across the edges of the galaxy wasn't a shadow or dust. It was emptiness. The Council tried to contact the source of the signal but received no reply. Their long-range sensors could detect nothing beyond the fading stars, just a blank void that moved like a slow wave through the cosmos. Back on Earth, life went on as usual. News networks spoke about technological progress, new space colonies, and the upcoming launch of Dauntless 2. The public believed humanity was entering its greatest age. Only a few knew the truth, and they stayed silent. The lead scientist barely slept anymore. Every night she stared at the readings from deep space. The whisper had changed again. It wasn't pulsing like before. It had become constant, a steady hum, low and endless, filling every channel of communication. Even when she turned off the equipment, she thought she could still hear it, faintly like an echo in her mind. No one could explain it. It was as if the signal had become part of reality itself. The Council continued sending warnings, each more desperate than the last. But humanity's leaders refused to listen. They argued that the FTL drive was the key to survival, the only way to escape the limits of the solar system. Even if something is out there, one of them said during a broadcast, "We'll face it. Humanity always has." The scientist watched that broadcast in silence, feeling an ache in her chest. She wanted to believe in that courage, that stubborn human strength that had carried their species through centuries of struggle. But deep down she knew this wasn't an enemy they could face. It wasn't something that could be fought or reasoned with. It was something beyond understanding. Then, one morning, the Deep Space Array detected something new, a movement at the edge of the solar system. It wasn't fast, but it was enormous, unlike anything the sensors had ever recorded. The readings didn't match any known material. It wasn't energy or dust or even mass in the traditional sense. It was distortion. Something was folding space, not like the human FTL drive, but effortlessly, naturally, as if space itself were bending to its will. The Council confirmed similar readings across several nearby systems. Whatever it was moving toward Earth. In a closed meeting, the scientist addressed the world's leaders. Her voice was tired but clear. "You have to stop the drive. Every time it runs, it draws that thing closer. It's following the same energy pattern. It's using our signal to find us," they argued for hours. Some believed her. Others refused. They said stopping the program would destroy hope, collapse economies, and cause panic, so they didn't stop. They decided to continue, and carefully they said, "Just one more test. That test would become humanity's last." The Dauntless 2 was launched from lunar base, its sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight. It was humanity's most advanced ship, capable of traveling 10 times farther than the first. The crew waved proudly at the cameras, their smiles bright and full of dreams. As the countdown began, the scientists stood in the control room, watching the monitors. The hum of the whisper grew louder, vibrating through the walls. It wasn't supposed to be audible, but everyone could feel it, like a faint tremor beneath their feet. 5, 4, 3. Her hands trembled on the console. Something inside her screamed to stop it, but she couldn't move. 2, 1. The Dauntless 2 engaged its drive. For a brief second, it vanished, the space around it folding in a perfect arc of light. Then the light didn't fade. It expanded. The sensors spiked with impossible readings. Gravity surging, magnetic fields twisting, energy levels breaking every known law. The light kept growing, pulsing outward in ripples that stretched across the moon's surface and beyond. Within seconds, every deep space monitor lit up with the same signature, the same pulse repeated everywhere at once. The whisper returned, louder than ever before, echoing across every frequency, every screen, every speaker, but this time, there were no words. There was only silence. Then the stars began to dim, not all at once, but slowly, like candles being blown out across the sky. One by one, constellations vanished, replaced by darkness deeper than night. The Council's communication lines cut off. Their entire network went silent. The scientists stood frozen in the control room, staring at the monitor that showed the outer planets. One by one, their signals disappeared. "What's happening?" someone whispered. No one answered. The hum grew until it filled the entire base, shaking the walls, rattling every glass and metal surface. The power flickered. The air itself felt heavy, thick, like it was being pulled outward. Then just as suddenly, it stopped. The lights stabilized. The hum vanished. The stars were still gone, but Earth was silent and calm again. For a moment, everyone thought it was over. Maybe it had just been a wave of energy. Maybe they had survived it. Then the scientist looked at the readings again, and her heart stopped. The Dauntless 2 was back. Its signal had reappeared, but it wasn't where it should be. The ship hadn't jumped across space. It was in the same place it had launched from. Yet its readings showed it had been gone for several hours, or maybe longer. The crew tried to contact command, but their voices were distorted, slow and echoing, as if coming from underwater. When they switched to visual feed, their faces looked blurred not by static but by something else. Something like shifting light. Then, for one brief second, the image cleared. The crew wasn't looking at their monitors. They were looking past the camera, eyes wide, mouths open in silent awe, and behind them through the ship's viewing window there was nothing. No stars, no planets, no space. Just darkness that seemed to move. The transmission cut off. After that, the ship vanished completely. No signal, no trace. Only the same soft hum returning once more, faint but steady. The Council didn't send another message. They didn't need to. Everyone who had heard the whisper understood now. Something had come through. Days passed. Life on Earth continued, but the night sky never returned to normal. Some stars reappeared, but not where they used to be. The constellations were twisted, their light slightly wrong, as if the universe had been rearranged. Scientists tried to explain it. Some said it was a distortion of perception, a side effect of space-time bending. Others thought it was an illusion caused by radiation. But deep down, they all knew it was something else. Something had changed. The lead scientist spent her last days quietly in her observatory, still searching the sky, still listening. The whisper had faded into the background now, soft and almost peaceful. Sometimes, when she was alone, she thought she could hear faint voices within it, calm, distant, and curious. One evening, she wrote a single note in her research log before turning off the console for the final time. It read, "We wanted to reach the stars, we did, but we never asked who might be waiting there. Outside, the night was beautiful. The sky shimmered faintly like the stars were breathing. The world was calm, unaware of how close it had come to something vast and beyond understanding. The Council no longer interfered with Earth's progress. They knew it didn't matter now. Humanity had crossed a boundary that could never be undone. The universe was listening, and somewhere in that endless dark between the stars, something listened back. Not as an enemy, not as a monster, but as something that had simply been waiting for someone to call. Humanity had called, and the answer had already begun.